Manhunt Episode 3 opens with a dream sequence of John Wilkes Booth. He's dreaming about his potential future, where he is being sworn in as the second leader of the Confederate States of America. He is woken by David Harold reading Booth's diary aloud. Booth had told him to do so, insisting that Richmond publishers will soon put his writing in schools and libraries. Booth tells Harold to kill Oswald Swan, but this suggestion is interrupted when they all have to take cover as Union soldiers ride past. Swan gets Booth and Harold to Rich Hill and demands his $5 payment, but Booth refuses to pay. Harold is greeted by Samuel Cox brandishing a shotgun in his face. Harold says they've been sent by Dr. Samuel Mudd. Upon recognizing Booth, Cox invites them all inside, except for Swan, who waits outside for his payment. Cox is a member of the Confederate Secret Service and insists Booth's assassination of Lincoln has kept the Southern dream alive. Booth wants to get to Richmond, but Cox says there's no point as the city has been decimated and Confederate leader Jefferson Davis is on the run. He suggests he should go to Florida, Mexico, or Montreal instead. Booth insists on going to Richmond so he can find Davis and become a Confederate symbol. Harold asks Swan why he hasn't turned them both in, and Swan says he wouldn't get the reward money even if he did due to racism. Swan leads Booth and Harold to a pickup spot for River Ghost, who is the man who will help them on their journey to Richmond. However, Swan wants an additional $3, which they reluctantly give him. Swan demands another $3 for returning their guns. Harold and Booth spend a night in the forest in freezing conditions. River Ghost finally appears and tells them there are too many soldiers around to move now. When their horses start making too much noise, Booth kills one of them. He tells Harold to kill the other, but he refuses. President Andrew Johnson complains that Stanton's Reconstruction Plan is too long to read and admits when he was vice president he didn't listen to Lincoln's explanation of it. Stanton says they have to incorporate free people into society, punish the Confederate leaders, and get those states back into the United States. Johnson agrees and says he wants to get Confederate traitors to pay, but not capturing Booth makes them look weak. He tells Stanton to track Booth down and arrest him now or forget about him entirely, as he only wants victories in his early days as president. Outside Stanton's house, a racist police officer called Frank Leach shoots and kills innocent black federal soldier Alec LeConte after accusing him of stealing a horse that actually belongs to him. Stanton wants Leach arrested and charged for the racially motivated murder. However, Johnson pardons Leach and plans to give amnesty to all classes of the Confederacy. Stanton confronts Johnson and warns him he's opening the gates to lawlessness across the country. Posing as a Confederate, Sanford Conover is now going by the name of Wallace. He meets a Confederate financier called George Sanders in Montreal. After being cut off by Lincoln, Sanders is waiting in Canada to see what side Johnson's presidency falls. Wallace finds out that John Surratt Jr. is hiding in a monastery, pretending to be a priest. Stanton goes up to Canada to extradite Surratt, as he's the best lead to finding out where Booth is hiding. Wallace finds Surratt and the pair soon start fighting. Stanton arrives to find Wallace tied up and Surratt has fled the scene. Wallace knows Surratt had a ticket for a ship out of Montreal. Surratt sank the ship and then boarded a nearby Confederate vessel. Stanton discovers John Wilkes Booth's name was on the manifest and a trunk with his name on it is recovered. Stanton figures out they wanted to fake Booth's death. Sanders is also revealed to be involved in the assassination of Lincoln. Sanders returns to the U.S. as the new owner of a newspaper that has run a front-page cartoon of Stanton working alongside Booth. Lafayette Baker tells Stanton that Sanders wants to control the story and turn the public against Stanton. If he's going to beat Sanders, Stanton needs to come up with a better story. The episode ends with Sanders having a meeting with his fellow Confederates. He reveals Johnson has granted pardons for most people, but he'll pay for those that don't get them to flee to Europe. He declares that with Lincoln no longer in power, they can finally restore the slave trade and that Booth has given them a second chance of achieving this. The episode review. The manhunt heats up in episode 3, with Stanton on the trail of Booth and Johnson establishing himself as the new president of the United States. For a show set in the past, there are so many comparisons that can be drawn to present-day politics. This episode is entertaining and significantly picks the pace up. Tobias Menzies and Anthony Boyle are great leads in this show, despite not sharing any screen time yet.